So I feel like I cut my last video on ENFPs and neuroticism short a bit. So I wanted to film something else here with advice specifically for the ENFP-T. This is the test result you may have received if you essentially are higher in neuroticism. You'll see the ENFP-T versus the ENFP-A, which is lower in neuroticism. So let me share a few tips for you on this if you are an ENFP who is higher in neuroticism. So one aspect of neuroticism is volatility, is that your emotions change a fair bit, and more than that, that when your mood changes, your behavior changes. There's some people where they're kind of the same no matter what. It doesn't really matter on their mood. It's just like they're the same. And others of us who are high in volatility, which includes myself, our behavior can change more with our mood, let's say. So one thing that's really helpful with this is to really drill it into your head to train yourself that your mood will change and to notice that and not make decisions in that time. I have a video I filmed years ago. I think it's called Why I Don't Make Decisions When I'm Hungover. And it's essentially on this topic. It's that when I'm feeling, the time I talked about being hungover, but it could be when you're feeling really sad, if you're really frustrated, if you're sick, whatever it is, if you're aware that you're not 100% yourself right now, right? When you just check in with yourself and you realize like, I'm not thinking my best, don't make big decisions, because in these times, it's really easy to have your thoughts spiral, to be thinking one bad thing, then another bad thing, and you just go down and down and down. And that happens if you let it happen. So in this video, what I share, and I'll share the same thing here, is it's not that I don't even make decisions. I don't actually allow myself to start contemplating the decisions, because I know if I let my mind go in that direction, it will just go down and down and down. And if you're not thinking right, you can convince yourself of whatever. So when I am in a headspace that I know is not my best headspace, I will just cut off thoughts. Like if I'm starting to think about business strategy or relationships with people or whatever else, I will just say to myself, dude, you're not in the right headspace for this. Go play a computer game, go for a run, watch a movie, go have a sauna, whatever it is. Like go do something else, because thinking about this, from the past won't get you anywhere. And yes, it takes a little bit of mental control to actually follow through on that. But it's not that hard to convince yourself to go play a video game or like call up your mom or, hang out with friends or go for a walk. Like just go do something else, but have those thoughts basically. If you're alone and you're having all these thoughts, then go spend time with a friend, right? Especially as an ENFP, it totally changes your thought dynamic when you're with someone else. So do something like that. Now, if you're a subscriber to the channel, that I'm all about the life design approach, which is design your life around what you want, but also your personality, who you are. And so obviously I could not make a video without mentioning that, is don't go take a job, for instance, or build the type of business that is going to require you to be totally consistent. Like stock trader, not for you, I'm sorry. It's not gonna be the right thing. Kindergarten teacher, probably not the best thing if you're high in volatility. Like by 2 p.m. when you're completely out of any sort of self-discipline and filtering and you're frustrated, you're gonna cause some serious trauma for those kids, okay? So don't pick a profession where you need to be like really stable and that volatility will have a really negative impact. And I'm completely serious about this. Like if you're a volatile person, don't get into something where volatility is going to be really harmful. It's going to be a complete disaster. Now, another aspect of neuroticism is something called withdrawal, which is basically anxiety about doing something new. So people who are very low in withdrawal are totally cool jumping into the unknown. They don't really worry about future things too much. And I'll give you a good example. I am actually low in withdrawal. So when I take the big 5, I'm giving lots of spoilers away here for my reveal video, but I score moderately low, but like 35th, 40 percentile on neuroticism, because I score quite high on volatility and extremely low on withdrawal. So future-wise, I jump into things. Part of having a low withdrawal for me, and I think it's probably got lower with time, is the more you jump into the unknown, the more you realize, like, I can handle that. That works out. And the last 6 months, we've been in a new country. We've been on lockdown with the virus. It's all worked out well. And, it's actually during the quarantine This house we've moved into is like a palace. We have a sauna, a jacuzzi, we have a banana tree right behind you on the camera, and literally moved in like 4 hours before the lockdown started. And we weren't allowed to like leave your house for 6 weeks or something like that. No, I think it was longer. It might've been 2 months. So Spain had the strictest lockdown. And so going through these things, here's my point, and this is actually the advice if you score moderate or high in withdrawal, is the more you go into the unknown, the more comfortable you become with it. So the first times, like when I went to move to Costa Rica in 2012, I was definitely scared. When I started my own businesses a bunch of times, the earlier times I was excited, of course, but I was more scared than I am now if I do something new. And it's because you build your confidence, your belief in jumping into the unknown, right? Just based on evidence. So if you are moderate or high in withdrawal, what I would suggest doing is baby steps, but consistent baby steps into the unknown. And occasionally, like big boy steps, push yourself a little bit more on it. So it's not that it always has to be baby steps. I know some of my biggest life changes were like going from here to here in one decision. It wasn't gradual. But again, I score lower in withdrawal, so that's a bit easier for me to do. If you've been thinking, let's say, about making a big change in your life for years and you just can't do it and you get overwhelmed and you never do it, then probably the baby step approach is better for you. And the other thing is, if there's unknown, like explore that unknown. So if you're terrified about becoming an entrepreneur, right? I'm gonna drop some self-promotion here. Full warning. If you're terrified about becoming an entrepreneur, but you really want to, but it's like there's this big divide now because all your friends, like no one you know is an entrepreneur, your family's not an entrepreneur, like this was like in my case, and then you are like, I want to be an entrepreneur. There's a big leap. So that's going to be terrifying because this like new life, working for yourself, is such an unknown. There's some weird guys on the internet telling you about like, look at my Lamborghini and you could have this too and whatever. But aside from that, it's kind of an unknown to you, right? So take some baby steps. Get involved with people who are entrepreneurs in one way or another. Maybe go volunteer, go be an intern, or join something. I have this program, for instance, ENFP Unleashed. I'll include a link if you'd like to learn more about it. And it is a training program for ENFPs. It is not about working for yourself, but a good percentage of the members do work for themselves, including myself. And within this community, we have lots of group coaching calls together and interaction and getting to know each other. So it's like if you don't know anyone who works for themselves, it's like a baby step where you're like, oh, this Jill person, she seems to work for herself and it doesn't seem too scared. She's not crying every time we talk. This Dan guy seems pretty normal when we do these live calls. This Chris person, he seems pretty normal. Jenny over here, she has her own business too. Carly seems cool. She's not freaked out all the time. She has her own business. And then pretty soon that unknown, it's not that unknown anymore to you. It's like you're not doing it yet, but you know a bunch of people who do. And you're like, oh, they're not really any smarter or any different than me or whatever. Maybe it's not that scary, right? You can apply this to anything, but open yourself up basically to the unknown more in whatever way will make it less terrifying for you. So what you're doing there, you're kind of doing like a two-punch approach to things, right? On one hand, by taking baby steps, entering the unknown, you build your confidence in being able to handle the unknown, right? So now you're able to handle more and more unknown because you've done it in the past. You look back, you're like, hey, I did it before, I can do it in the future. And then the unknown, you make it less unknown. So before there was this huge divide, right? I'm going to make sure I stay on camera. You have this huge divide. And then you build your confidence by doing baby steps. So you're like here. And then you make this unknown less scary by meeting people who've been in that unknown or researching or whatever. And now suddenly you bring those two together. And that's how you can then make a big leap, essentially. But it doesn't feel like as big of a leap because you've turned the light on the unknown and you're like, it's not actually so scary. And actually I'm braver than I thought I was. Cool. And by the way, I should mention that if you are an ENFP-T and you found this helpful, you can go deeper into some of my training at dreamsaroundtheworld.com/ENFP Big 5. There will be a card that pops up to that and a link in the description. But before we go, I wanted to share one more tip around neuroticism. And this, I think, is especially true with volatility, but I think it probably helps with withdrawal as well. So the advice I shared so far was based on you have a fixed level of neuroticism, basically, and what are the things that you can do to improve. Well, I mentioned in an earlier video that I think neuroticism is one of the traits that actually can vary a fair bit. And I think it's tied to, okay, I'll say mental health, but I more mean like brain health, like being at peak function. So I have found with myself, when I am eating really well, and for me that is low carb, and not eating junk food and all that. That goes without saying, but the low carb as well, being quite strict with that, lots of healthy oils, high fat. That's just for me. My brain tends to work a lot better on that. And when I'm exercising a lot, especially cardio exercise, when I do those things, my volatility, the aspect of neuroticism, goes way down. I am like much more stable with my mood. I deal with adversity a lot better. Like if I were to take the test based on the times when I am exercising every day and eating really well, I think my volatility score would actually be quite low. Like if I look at my childhood, I was very volatile and I still can be to some extent. But when I'm taking care of my brain and body on that, and even things like inputs, I've talked about this on the channel lots before, like more focused on uplifting videos, movies, people, and not watching the news and other garbage out there, that I tend to be a lot less volatile and definitely dealing with setbacks. And if I look over the past year or so, when I deal with a setback now, I am much better at just analyzing the situation and figuring out what I need to do next and moving forward with it. And some of that comes from experience, some of it comes from built up confidence. I mentioned earlier in this video about the more you deal with tough situations, the more they don't faze you anymore, for sure. But I think a lot of it is brain health, and a lot of that comes down to actually exercise. So if you are someone who is high in neuroticism, high in volatility, building up your cardiovascular system, exercising more, getting outside into nature, that is going to make a massive long-term difference. So highly, highly recommend that. All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for watching. If you are new here, I publish new videos each and every week, not only in this series on the Big Five and ENFPs, but generally for ENFPs each and every week. So hit the subscribe button and I will catch you in the next video soon. Bye. So the video you just watched is part of a series I'm filming on ENFPs and the Big Five, where we look at each of the Big Five personality traits, what they are, how they relate to being an ENFP, and some very practical advice about what your Big Five traits mean and what you should do to create the most awesome life possible for yourself based on those results. If this topic is interesting to you, you should head to dreamsaroundtheworld.com/ENFP Big Five. There you'll be able to sign up to receive notifications when each new video in the series is released, to receive a summary with links to each of the videos in the series when it is complete, as well as a written summary of the entire series if you prefer to have something you can print out and go through in the future. You also receive a bonus video for subscribers only, where I reveal my personal results on all 10 dimensions of the Big Five, as well as some extra tips that I wasn't able to fit into these videos, specifically for ENFPs as it relates to our Big Five traits. So if you want that, it is dreamsaroundtheworld.com/ENFP Big Five. I'll include a link in the description, and a card should have popped up as well. Thanks for watching.